Hello and welcome to our discussion on the group project. The focus of this project will be pricing of power. In your previous project, we started understanding the application of cost in pricing. But when we say pricing, it can happen in the market-driven pricing. That was your previous project, where you picked up a FMCG company and examine the price of a particular product or a particular brand. But in that case, the price is fixed by the market, determined by the market. But there is, to get a complete picture of pricing, it is also necessary to understand the regulatory product like uh, power. In regulatory pricing, the market itself will not decide. There's a regulator. The regulatory commission in every state is there to fix the price of power. And our focus of the second part of the group assignment is to understand the pricing of power. But unlike the market-driven pricing project, which you have completed before the midterm, the data for pricing was not available there. But for a power company, the data for the pricing is available in a public domain because this is a regulated market. So before we get into the power sector pricing, let us get a bird's eye view of the sector itself. The sector has different components of the business. So the first component is a generation, then transmission and distribution. And our project will be on this part, on the distribution part of that's a place where a consumer meets the supplier. So the power sector can be vertically divided into generation, transmission, and distribution. So the power plants generate electricity, then transformers step up the voltage for transmission. Then the transmission line carry the electricity over long distances. Now power can go from south to east, south to north, or north to east. Anywhere power can move now because of the long distance transmission lines. Then this transmission lines will be again step down, and then the ultimate consumer gets power. People like, residential consumers will take power at this end. And our project, this part of the project is also towards this aspect of the business. We are not getting into the pricing of generation or a pricing of transmission. We are focusing attention on distribution, the price at which you buy power. So you might have seen the electricity bill that you maybe receive at home. If you have not seen, observe that henceforth. So this project will give you an idea about how price is determined at the distribution level and what is the composition of the price. We are not getting into the process of the regulatory process. That is more legal. What we are going to see is the costing aspect of the components of the cost. So in case of power sector, they say that power flows from G to D, whereas cash flows from D to G, because the money gets into the sector from the consumer, isn't it? So the survival of the sector to a large extent depends on the distribution part of the business. So therefore, pricing plays a very important role in the survival of the sector. The sector will survive, of course. Who will survive within that sector? which player. So now big players like Tata's, Reliance, and many other companies are involved in this sector. So therefore, it is very useful and necessary to understand how and what is the composition of the price that you pay when you consume electricity. For example, as I said, the power flows from G to D, so obviously cost will also flow. That is the focus of our conversation. For example, if you see the average cost to serve at the distribution is 2.82 rupees 80 paisa. So this consists of the generation cost and transmission cost. The power is generated on average. This is average, slightly old data. So the power is generated at 1 rupee 1.13 rupees per kilowatt hour. That is a unit of measurement. And by the time it goes to the transmission cost adds into it. So another 136 minus 113. So about 23 paisa is about transmission cost. The cost of generation is 1.13. Cost of transmission is 0.23. And then the cost of distribution, which is 2.8 minus 1.3. And as I mentioned, the project will be around understanding this average cost, the cost of distribution. So what is this cost of distribution? So again, with a slightly old data, let me just give you an idea, a bird's eye view once again. So this 1.13 average cost, any company which is, the power is generated, you may be knowing that there are different sources of power. The power can be solar power, thermal power, hydropower, many other renewable powers. So just to give you an idea, a general central thermal power stations like NTPC, on average, it will be 1.83 and per unit of power. Whereas hydropower cost will be very low. So the average cost, so I'm just combining as an average of thermal, hydro, solar, and other renewable powers. Average, let us take 1.13. Actually, you can find out. So these power companies, these thermal companies, there is a back-end cost also. Coal India contributes to cost. If you see the value chain, Coal India affects thermal powers, and then thermal power companies affects the transmission companies, and transmission companies affect cost of distribution companies, and the distribution cost affect people like you and I, and also the industry. So therefore, understanding cost, you can see that the cost components, employee cost, depreciation, interest, losses. So this project will actually give you an opportunity to understand the various components of this cost. The components of the price that you pay without even getting into the nitty-gritty of the sector. The sector is a highly technical in nature, very complicated business. But price is a very nice lens. Cost provides you a nice lens to understand the industry itself. This picture, this presentation itself throws light on the complexities of the sector. But at the same time, you can see the components of the cost are more or less same. So therefore, the objective of this particular part of the project of accounting for decision making is to understand the components of the cost and understand how cost is recovered in the form of tariff. So this particular cost which you said, 2.89, 2 rupees 85 paisa, 2 rupee 85 paisa. What is the composition of cost? In general, 68 to 70% or 60 to 80% in many cases accounts for the cost of power. That means G and T's cost. And the balance 32% in this case accounts, is contributed by employee cost 16%, admin cost, repairs and maintenance cost, interest, depreciation, and return on equity also. Because it is regulated, the Electricity Supply Act says that a company can also earn certain amount of profit, and that is around, it also becomes a part of the cost. So cost, the price that we sell, the price at which you buy power consists of cost and return on investment. That's what this is called, cost plus pricing. The pricing policies that the companies follow is a cost plus pricing. What is that plus? Plus is that return on equity. So a power company is allowed to recover entire cost. If you remember, we have been saying one of the ways in costing classes we define pricing. Pricing is a process of cost recovery. So what will a power distribution company recover? Will recover cost of power, employee cost, admin cost, R&M cost, some provisions for bad and doubtful debt, depreciation, interest, return on equity, as well as the tax. So everything is recovered by selling the product in the market. And that is a critical, important feature of pricing of a regulated market. This type of detailed information will not be available in FMCG industry or any other market-driven industry. That is the best part of pricing and understanding costing and pricing of a regulated company. So if you examine the price of FMCG and price of power, you will get a holistic picture about use of cost information. Obviously, a question should come to your mind at this juncture that why is this cost of power accounts for such a high percentage of the total amount to be recovered, and which is normally called annual revenue required. So annual revenue requirement is that what I recover or allowed to recover. What is that consists of? Consists of cost of power, employee cost, admin cost, R&M costs, and depreciation, interest. So in a conventional costing definition, if you remember, we might have discussed several times that interest is kept aside. Interest by default is not part of costing, but for the purpose of pricing, I would like to recover interest also, return also. And this is a classic example of pricing of power, where you're allowed to recover the entire cost and interest and rate of and certain specified return on investment. So the question remains with us, why the COP, cost of power, is so high? One of the reasons, there may be several reasons. One of the important reasons is the normal, the conversation and over a cup of, over coffee tables in the newspapers, we say because of the T&D losses, transmission and distribution losses. So that I would like to explain by showing these two numbers. On average in India, about 1.1 million units are purchased by the distribution companies. 1.13 million units means kilowatt hours, are purchased by the distribution companies from the generation companies. But how many units they're selling? They're selling 0.97 million units. So about 85% is sold. This is average, mind you, average at the country level. At the state level, some places this 85%, maybe 70%, 65%. In Orissa, it is around 75%. In some of the divisions in Orissa, it will be around 65% also. So one of the critical reasons for this high COP is a very high percentage, very low percentage of, the difference between the units purchased and units sold. This 85% is, what is this 85%? 85% of the input purchased is sold. So what is happening to the balance 15% is a loss. So if the loss goes up, COP goes up. So there is an input-output relationship in your variance analysis, in your budgeting, in your cost calculation, in your fixed costs and variable cost calculation. We might have seen that. All other things remaining constant, if the volume goes down, the cost per unit goes up, and vice versa, the volume of sales here. The volume of sales goes down here when the losses are high. So therefore, we can see the CVP relationship also very clearly in a regulated industry. So our purpose is to understand this of different companies. So your groups have to get into that data. So be with me for some more time and explain what is to be done. So with this backdrop, the relevant material, maybe a write-up, will also be shared on our course page. But the work to be done is, we are, unlike the previous part of the project, we are defining it very clearly. The data is available. So all that each group has to do is select a power distribution company. For the time being, don't select generation or a transmission company. Later on, if you are interested, you can study them also. So that we'll have consistency across the groups and across the sections. Select a power distribution company, and I'll show you where is the data available, and do the following. Average cost to serve for 3 to 5 years. It is available in PDF, convert them into Excel, or in some cases, it's also available in Excel. Examine the composition of the cost. Composition of the cost means this. What percentage of the total cost is COP? Maybe Orissa it is 80%, but in Maharashtra it may be 70% or 90%, we don't know. And over a period of time, how it is changing. Examine the change over the period. And the average tariff is also available. So it has been seen that average tariff, that means the price, and the average cost. In many cases, there will be a gap, and the gap is the average revenue will be, many cases, for many clients will be lower than the average cost to serve. That is why the concept of subsidy comes into picture. We are not getting into subsidy for this project. Our project is only very clear. Understand the cost to serve, understand the components of the cost, compare the cost with the price or average realization. That's what they say. And then prepare a short report. Don't just leave it like numbers. Put some figures, pictures, graphs, and then write a short report, not more than 5 or 6 pages, capturing the work that you have done. The deliverable, as usual, the deliverable will have 2 parts. One is a Word file, which is a report. The other is an Excel file, which will have all this data. So you may ask, where are we going to get this data? First of all, it is purely library-based, internet-based, secondary database project. You don't have to go out anywhere. So 2 important sources is a power finance company. I'll show you that is having data for several years about almost every state company's data available there. So the site is given there, the web link is there. And specific company data will also be available at the state level electricity regulatory commissions. Okay, if you suppose you want to see Orissa Distribution Company, then you have Orissa Electricity Regulatory Commission. To give you some idea about this data. For example, this is PFC. This is the Forum of Regulators. Huh? The Forum of Regulators has a very comprehensive website. For every electricity regulatory commission, there is a link here. Okay, so once you go to the link, go to the particular company which are operating in that state and download the data. Go to the tariff and download that data. That is the one source. The other source is, as I mentioned, is the Power Finance Company. Yeah? The Power Finance Company every year comes out with this report. This is called Report on Performance of Power Utilities. The power utilities reports, you can see the latest, I think 22 is available. Okay, yes, this is latest. So last 3 years data definitely will be available there. And if you want to expand the database or the period, you can, that depends on you. So this project will not suffer because of non-availability of data. In fact, it has more than what is required for the project. So the data that you'll have, once you go to the sites which I mentioned, you may, for some time, you may get overwhelmed with the data available there. But be careful, pick up the annual revenue requirement table, download that, bring it to your Excel, and then start observing. The best part is the consistency with respect to the nomenclatures. Almost every company will have these 6 or 7 components. Observe the process, how they are compiling, and what will be different will be this losses. Okay, what percentage of losses. So overall, if I take you back, what we expect in this project is, for example, if you're picking up a Maharashtra distribution company, then the deliverable should look like this. What is the cost? What is the composition? Where is the cost flowing? So get the data, put it in a nice way, compare it over a period of time, and prepare the report. In the process, we are achieving 2 objectives, from this project. One objective is to give a complete picture of pricing. Why pricing? Because cost plays a very important role in this decision making, managerial. One of the important managerial decision making is pricing, and cost plays a very important role, whether it is a market driven company or it is a regulated company like Tata or Tata's or Reliance, who are operating in the power sector. And more so, as a citizen, as an intelligent person, it's always important for us to know what are you actually paying. Please check the bill that you get every month. I'm sure most of you might not have seen the bill. Next visit to home, please pick up the bill that you are getting and check the components. What is the component of the price? The components that you see there may not be the components that you are discussing here or you're presenting here, because that is from the sales price. What you're seeing is the cost price. So that itself will be quite interesting learning for you. And if you have interest, continue reading more. And we get companies like Pricewaterhouse, PwC's, Deloitte's, and KPMG's or to campus. They take people for consulting. And lots of people of XIMB from XIMB are working on power sector. Okay, thank you very much and all the best.